The atmosphere inside Judge Boyd's courtroom was tense. Cameras were set up for a live broadcast, capturing every moment of the drama unfolding. The courtroom was packed with spectators, reporters, and legal teams, but the real tension lay between the stern Judge Boyd and the young, fiery defense attorney, Thomas Harris. It was a high-profile case. A millionaire real estate mogul, Gregory Walters, was accused of defrauding several investors out of millions of dollars. As the defense attorney, Harris was tasked with defending Walters, who sat confidently in the defendant's chair. But today was unlike any other day in court. Harris had one goal: to show the world that Gregory Walters was not the man he was portrayed to be. But Judge Boyd was no pushover. He had a reputation for being tough, meticulous, and uncompromising. The audience could feel the electric tension, even as the room filled with the sounds of people shifting in their seats, trying to catch every word. There was no doubt that this case would make history. Harris stood, adjusting his suit, as he addressed the courtroom with fervor. He took a deep breath, hoping to regain his confidence after the earlier confrontation with Judge Boyd. His words were deliberate, each one intended to convince both the jury and the public. Harris, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the case before you may seem like a simple one. But let me tell you, it's not. What we are dealing with here is not just fraud. We are dealing with a systematic campaign to destroy the life of an innocent man. The man you see in the defendant's chair is a visionary, a man who has built this empire from the ground up. He is not a criminal. He is a victim of an unjust system. Harris paused, looking at Walters, who sat confidently but nervously in his chair. Harris' eyes moved from the defendant to the jury, making eye contact with each juror. He needed them to understand that the real injustice was not in Walters' actions, but in the allegations levied against him. Judge Boyd, sitting high up on his bench, slammed his gavel down, cutting Harris off mid-sentence. Judge Boyd, Murdoch Harris, I will remind you that this is a courtroom, not a stage for speeches. Stick to the facts. If you can't keep your arguments grounded in reality, I'll have you removed from this court. The tension in the room thickened. The viewers watching the live broadcast could feel the discomfort from across the screen. It was clear that this trial was about to take a sharp turn. Harris, though taken aback by the sudden interruption, didn't show his surprise. He was prepared for this, or at least, he thought it was. Harris, Your Honor, with all due respect, I am speaking the truth. What has been portrayed to this court about my client, Mr. Walters, is far from the reality of the situation. The prosecution wants you to believe the worst, but I ask you to look at the evidence with a clear mind. Judge Boyd's eyes narrowed, and he leaned forward, his voice lowering to a growl, clearly irritated by Harris' disregard for the rules. Judge Boyd, I didn't come here to listen to your delusions, Murdoch Harris. This trial isn't about telling tales. It's about justice, and you will respect this court's proceedings. If you continue speaking out of turn, I will hold you in contempt. Harris stood frozen for a moment, sensing that his first attempt to sway the judge had failed. He composed himself, his thoughts racing, and prepared for the next move. He wasn't about to back down so easily. He turned to face the jury, and with a calm yet authoritative voice, continued, Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to look beyond the media circus surrounding this case. The truth lies in the details. The prosecution wants you to believe that Gregory Walters is a criminal, but I'm here to show you that he's been wrongly accused. Every single witness who has spoken against him has either been bought off or manipulated. I am confident that after hearing the truth, you will see the reality that has been hidden from you. As Harris spoke, Judge Boyd stared at him with icy eyes, waiting for him to finish. Once Harris stopped, Boyd's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Judge Boyd, Mr. Harris, I'm going to make this very clear. If you continue to speak out of turn and ignore the rules of this courtroom, I will hold you in contempt, and I will not hesitate to do so. Harris, his voice trembling slightly but determined, responded. Harris, I am simply telling the truth, Your Honor, the truth that you refuse to acknowledge. If you cannot allow this truth to come out, then this courtroom will no longer be a place of justice. The room grew still. The audience held their breath. The live broadcast cameras zoomed in on Judge Boyd's face, which had now turned a shade darker with rising frustration. But before he could respond, the prosecutor, Elaine Richards, stood up. She was ready to make her move, and she knew the weight of the moment. Elaine Richards. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is clear that Mr. Harris is trying to cloud the facts with an emotional argument. He is trying to turn this trial into a spectacle when all it is at its core is a case of fraud. Let's be clear. We are not here to hear wild accusations. We are here to find out the truth. And the truth is this: Gregory Walters is a criminal. He deceived countless investors. He took their money and promised them returns he never intended to give. Harris shot a glance at Judge Boyd, his hands trembling slightly. He couldn't afford to let Richards dominate the room. His client's future depended on this moment. But something was off. He could feel it in the air. Harris, you can present all the evidence you want, Ms. Richards, but none of it proves my client's guilt. The evidence is circumstantial at best. This case is a setup, and you know it. The prosecution's case was based on several witnesses who had testified to seeing Gregory Walters engaged in fraudulent activities. But Harris knew that none of these witnesses could be trusted. They had been paid off or manipulated. Still, he needed to prove this to the jury, and the clock was ticking. Judge Boyd's eyes bored into Harris with an intensity that seemed to pierce through him. Judge Boyd, Mr. Harris, I'll remind you once again that this courtroom is not a place for you to make baseless claims. If you have no real evidence to support your arguments, I suggest you refrain from making them altogether. As the arguments escalated, the prosecution's star witness, a former employee of Gregory Walters named Peter Simmons, was called to the stand. Simmons had worked with Walters for years and was expected to testify in Walters' favor. But when he walked into the courtroom, something in the air changed. Simmons, usually a calm and composed man, now appeared unsettled. He was shaking, his face pale. He had a look of regret in his eyes. Peter Simmons, I've been asked to testify about my former employer, Gregory Walters, and I wish I could tell you everything I know, but the truth is, I've been paid off. I was promised a large sum of money to remain silent about certain things. Gregory Walters. He's guilty. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Harris stood frozen, unable to process the bombshell revelation. This was the witness he had hoped would clear his client's name. But now, it seemed like everything he had fought for was slipping away. Harris, what? You've been paid off? How can you say this about my client, Peter Simmons? I didn't want to do it, but the money was too much to refuse. Walters is responsible for the fraud. He's been lying to all of us. I had no choice but to testify against him. The words hit Harris like a ton of bricks. This was not how he had imagined the trial unfolding. His mind raced as he tried to think of a way out, but nothing came to him. Judge Boyd's gaze never left Harris. He could see the shift in the defense attorney's face, the realization that his case had just been turned upside down. The courtroom grew tense as Judge Boyd's voice rang out. Judge Boyd, Mr. Harris, it seems that your defense has crumbled. The truth has been revealed. I will not allow you to waste any more of the court's time. I will now pass my judgment. Harris stood before the jury one last time, his voice barely above a whisper. Harris, I stand before you, asking for justice. But the truth is that I have failed you. I have failed to prove my client's innocence. And for that, I am truly sorry. Judge Boyd looked at Harris, his face unreadable. The courtroom was silent. Judge Boyd, Mr. Harris, I admire your efforts to defend your client, but the facts are clear. The evidence speaks for itself. Gregory Walters, you are found guilty of fraud. You will be sentenced accordingly. The once confident Walters sat, his face pale, as the gavel came down. Harris, defeated, walked out of the courtroom with his head held low. He had fought hard, but sometimes, no matter how much you believe in your cause, the truth comes crashing down. The case of Gregory Walters would go down as one of the most dramatic courtroom battles in recent history. And for Judge Boyd, it was just another day in the relentless pursuit of justice.